Dr. Bhavana Rudra, who is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Information Technology, NITK Surathkal. She has been awarded the PhD degree in 2015 from IIIT Allahabad, India. Her research areas include network security, cyber security, future internet security, blockchain, quantum cryptography. She is guiding various undergraduate and postgraduate projects in the field of security for various real-time applications. She has published several research papers in peer-reviewed international journals, SCI, and international conferences, Scopus and DBLP. She has also published one book on future internet security issues, and she has applied for patent in the field of IoT, and currently she is actively working with students in cybersecurity and network security domains. She has received several awards such as the Emerging Researcher Award, Educator Award from the organizations like International Institute of Organized Research Australia, as well as from Green Thinkers in 2017 and 2018. I would like to welcome you, ma'am, and thank you for accepting our invitation. And we all are waiting for your session. And over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for inviting me as speaker for the session. I welcome all the participants for the session. Today we are going to discuss about the consensus algorithms or consensus mechanisms which are to be used in the blockchain technology in order to perform one particular transaction. Tushar and all others who have muted their mic, can you please mute your mic? Yeah, thank you. So when we are discussing about the consensus mechanisms, we are supposed to go with what is the definition of the consensus algorithm? Why we are using the consensus algorithm? Actually, when you are at home and you want to convey some kind of information, if no other person or your family members doesn't agree with that information, then what kind of rules or what kind of conditions or what kind of arguments which go on, and everybody come upon to an agreement saying that okay, we will do it on this kind of condition. But at home, like it's like authority kind of basis will work. Same authority kind of work will also be taken place by some of the consensus algorithms that we are going to see, the various consensus algorithms. Okay, so in that way, so actually whatever the home scenario what we see, as the elder person will decide and all the children and all other people will obey, same that kind of base condition has been considered for the development of consensus algorithms, for some of the consensus algorithms, not all the consensus, but some of them that we are going to see anyways. So as we are discussing that it has to achieve an agreement in a distributed network. Although the family members are distributed all around the India, but all around the world, you can say, but we all agree to one statement saying that no, this is not good, this is good, this is that, this and all arguments will go on, but finally we will come to a single value. So similarly, these all agreements, these all conditions and ethical rules and everything will be discussed before we start any transaction within a particular group. Whether it is a public domain, whether it is a private blockchain, whether it is a partial blockchain method, anything, all 12 types of blockchain methods will use this consensus algorithms. Okay, so in this way, I'll start we will just move to the objectives. We will discuss about the properties. We will discuss about the 12 different consensus algorithms which are present in the blockchain technology, along with their advantages, their applications, their disadvantages, and how we move from one to the other. And at the end, we will just see like which one, like you will have a complete overview of what are the various consensus algorithms and which you need to apply for your own application. So that is much more important. Learning from anywhere is so easy, but when you try to apply somewhere, then we are in a dilemma where to apply, which algorithm has to be applied, how to apply, and which algorithm is suitable for that particular application. That is much more important. Okay, so in a distributed computing, multi-agent systems like cryptocurrency solves the problem of concurrent mechanisms. So these are the various examples which are using the consensus algorithms, that is your Google PageRank, load balancing, smart grids, clock synchronization, and drone control. Okay, so they use the public blockchain, private blockchains, and blockchains, as there are different types of consensus which work on different principles. So these are the objectives of the consensus algorithms. That is, the first one is agreement seeking. You should able to make the other nodes to agree to a agreement which each and everyone has to follow until unless the transaction is completed. They cannot deny saying that, okay, we have agreed at that particular point, now we are not interested, because everybody is equal important in the transaction level. Okay, so next comes the collaborative. They should try to work together in order to achieve or in order to achieve some particular goal. That is nothing but, in the blockchain we generally say goal is nothing but the solving the puzzle. Okay, so in that way it should be collaborative work and cooperative work. Cooperative is nothing but they should not put their own interest in anything, but rather they should work as a team, where even if puzzle level is high, difficulty level of the puzzle is high, then they should able to solve the partial puzzle. Solvation will also help the other miner or other node in the validator in the network to further solve and forward the information to the other node. So in that way, they can even they will share the rewards also. This is the collaborative and cooperative work should exist in the network. Then only we can say that we will achieve the consensus mechanism. Egalitarian is nothing but group of nodes are seeking to build a consensus. So in that we are going to allow each and every node with an equal voting right. Okay, so they should have the equal right and they should build in order to build the consensus. So once the vote cannot be significant then of the other. So over here the equal right or equal authority of each and every node in the group has to be taken care. Next comes the inclusive. Inclusive is nothing but nodes should be involved in each and every transaction. Okay, it shouldn't be like a regular voting. People don't really feel like voting because they didn't, but they won't have any way. Everything has to be included. Even they should take care of their they should take care of that particular node rewards. They should take care of their computational power, how much they are spending. They should collaborative. They should be equal cooperation. Then only they will equally work in the network. Participatory. The process of the consensus should be active, where every node should participate in the process. So these are the various objectives of the consensus, all the compulsory objectives. Okay. Next comes the properties of the consensus algorithm. What are the various properties which exist in the consensus algorithms that need to be followed by many of the nodes or the network which the consensus algorithm need to be allowed? The first property is the structural property. This is like the multiple nodes are organized to participate in the algorithm, but how they should be organized. The structure of the whole network of the multiple nodes need to be taken care at this particular level. If this property has been satisfied, then you can say that we have to use this particular algorithm. If we know the structural property of that particular network, then we can easily say that I can go with proof of work. I can go with proof of stake. I can go with elapsed proof of time. I can go with something else algorithm. Okay, so this is how it just goes on. So that's the reason. First thing is we should able to know what kind of structure or network is following. In that way, when we divide the structure properties, we have to consider three important major properties within the structure. So first one is the node type. What are the node type? How it is going to involve in the consensus? So that we have to consider. Next comes the structure type. Structure type itself consists of a single structure type and multiple structure type committees. So whereas single committee is all nodes are in a single committee and all are involved for one particular transaction. If we are going towards the multiple committees, then small groups will be formed, but one particular, like it all belongs to one single group, but there are some multiple committees within that. In the committees, there will be a open or closed committees where we are going to consider the participants. If they are open to, if the committee is open to all the participants, then we can say that the committee type is open. If it is only limited to a particular set of nodes within that particular network, then we say it as a closed committee. Okay. Next, how the committee will be formed within this. So when we are saying that single committee, multiple committee, but how the committee will be formed? So it is formed implicitly or it may be formed explicitly. When we are saying about implicit formation, it does not require any additional protocol tools to be followed, because everybody within itself, they know they have already agreed for some consensus rule. So that's the reason we don't require any kind of, again, to impose the protocols. Whereas for the explicit committee, we have to take some protocols. Some protocols need to be introduced within that particular committee, so that the external nodes which are going to involve within that particular committee has to take care of each and every node which is present in the network. Next comes the underlying mechanism. What do you mean by underlying mechanism which has to be followed by the structural property? So whether you are following a hierarchical mechanism in the structure formation of the nodes, or whether you are going to have a flat formation, or with the help of lottery system, you are going to have a several rounds and you are going to have a set of rules over there and fix it so that all will have equal rights. Okay, so or else if you have the hierarchical method, then if you are adopting the hierarchical mechanism, then what are the nodes which are at higher levels, what are the nodes which are at lower levels, everything need to be specified. Okay, so this is about the structural properties. So next comes the security properties. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one more within the structural property. I have forgotten to explain about the multiple committees. I've explained about the single committee, whereas I have forgotten to explain the multiple committee. So what do you mean by multiple committee? Oh, already explained, I think so. Like it's a hierarchical strategy which it follows. That is a multiple committee property. Next comes the security properties. So what are the security properties it has to follow? So it has to follow the authentication. Definitely, it has to authenticate all the nodes which are present in the network. Next comes the sensor resistance. Censorship resistance is nothing but up to what level even if the communication is suppressed, it will work in the network. All the nodes will able to act properly and work in the network. Okay. Next comes the attack vectors. That is, what are the various attacks which are possible on the algorithm has to be mentioned. So somehow to overcome that, need to be precautions need to be taken care of. Okay. Next comes the advisory tolerance. What is the maximum Byzantine nodes which are allowed in the that need to be
Ma'am,
yes.
Excuse me, ma'am. The next slides are not being shown. I mean,
No,
the
no, no. I
slide
didn't
which
change the slides. I didn't change the slides. These are the only sub properties of these three properties. Okay.
Okay.
Next comes the Sybil protection. So Sybil protection is nothing but the illegal benefits what they are going to achieve. So Sybil attack, whatever we know about the network security attack, same thing is possible. Non-repudiation is also possible over here. So we should take care of non-repudiation concept, and it should have a DOS resistance also. So that security properties can be, these are the minimum security properties which has to be incorporated in the consensus algorithms. Next comes the performance properties. So fault tolerance need to be considered, throughput has to be considered, scalability has to be considered, latency has to be considered, and energy consumption need to be considered for the performance properties. Okay. So next comes, what are the various types of consensus algorithm? These are the various types of consensus algorithm which exist in the blockchain. That is the proof of work, proof of stake, delegated proof of stake, practical Byzantine fault tolerance, Ripple, Paxos, multi-Paxos. Multi-Paxos is not there as it is a part of Paxos only. So Raft consensus, proof of Elapstime, proof of burn, proof of capacity, proof of retrievability, and proof of luck algorithm. So these are the various algorithms which exist in this particular consensus mechanism. Which one will suit to our application, that we need to know properly before we apply the consensus algorithm. Okay, so these are the various, we are going to see in detail with each and every algorithm in the next coming slides. First comes the proof of work. So it is a standard algorithm which was already designed by Dwork and Mooney in 1993, but it has been, the proof of work word has been given by Marcus, and a proper documentation was formed in 1999. Okay, a participant node is expected over here to show that the work what they have completed and submitted. Over here, the miners who are working on a particular transaction will consume more computational power, because if we say that 2 plus 2 equals to 4 is not enough in this particular scenario. Although you have solved the problem, again you have to show them how you have solved the problem and how you have achieved to that particular level. Because there might be some different levels, different way of solving one particular problem, right? So in order to, when you are trying to solve or when you are trying to show it again to the authority, then obviously the computation power consumption will be good. Okay, miners over here, miners will compete with each other in order to complete the network transactions, and they want to get the rewards. So in order to get the reward, they try to consume the power and computational resources in order to solve one particular problem. Okay, so this is how the proof of work will work. So these are the two characteristics of the proof of work. That is, very difficult to solve the mathematical problem. The correctness of the solution can be easily verified. These steps which you go back 1 or 2 steps, then easily it can be verified. But when a user has to, like, once the problem has been solved, again you have to explain from the starting level to the ending level how you have achieved. That will consume the computation. So that will consume the resources more. So each block hash contains the previous block hash, which increases the security and prevents the violation of the block. New block is created if miner succeeds to solve the problem. Transactions are placed in this block and therefore considered as confirmed. Until unless they get the confirmation, they cannot forward that particular transaction to the next level. Okay, so this is how the proof of work will work. So over here, the the advantages of proof of work which we are going to see is defense from the DDoS attacks. Yes, the mining possibilities over here is, it will, or in order to solve the puzzles and generate the new block, the counts have to have a great computational power. The nodes which contain more money are not in charge of making the whole network's decision. Over here, the miners will have the all possibilities to work on a particular problem. But the disadvantages which it has is the 51% attack. So 51% attack is nothing but if a node gains the 51% share in the complete entire network, then it can behave. There is a chances that it can misbehave. It can allow the attacker nodes to enter into the network. Okay, the complete authority will be on that particular node. So that's the reason it will be the controlling authority for that particular network. So it can corrupt the blockchain and it can spoil the entire network, and it will completely work. Like it will allow 2 or 3 attacker nodes into the network, and it may change the functions of the network. Okay. Next comes the time consuming. As I have mentioned, the correct solution to the puzzle must be solved to the mine of the block, and the time consuming operations have to search the several nouns values has to be searched in order to solve the puzzle. So that will be the time consuming in this proof of work algorithm. Next comes the resource consumption. It is a hard mathematical problem which has been assigned in the network in order to gain the rewards. So it will definitely it will consume high quantities of computing resources. Okay. Next comes the transaction confirmation time. Transaction confirmation time is much more because it takes minimum 10 minutes to maximum 60 minutes. Okay, so in that way sometimes they may not connect or commit to that particular transaction. So everybody in the node network has to wait for that particular transaction has to occur. Okay, so it is not an immediate transaction result. Whatever we get, it will take little time. So useless calculations, obviously we will perform again and again. The nouns values will be used, and we use this mathematical problem in order to solve them. We have to calculate the different steps we will follow. All those steps which are involved in this will be useless. So these are the various disadvantages of the proof of work. What are the applications of proof of work? Very famous, like this proof of work was the first one which has come into picture. Still the blockchain technology will use this proof of work only. Many have adopted the proof of work only. Maximum up to, I mean, until unless they say that we don't want this kind of disadvantages, then they will adopt the some other protocol. The famous applications which you see is using Bitcoin or Ethereum. Those are the applications which are purely based on the proof of work. All the Ethereum based applications, all the Bitcoin based applications are the examples for the proof of work. Okay, you can say that these are the various applications for the proof of work. So this is the applications which I have discussed. So next comes the proof of stake. So what do you mean by proof of stake? So over here, as proof of work is like once 51% risk, in order to decrease that 51% risk in the network, the network administrators, the blockchain administrators have come up with a concept saying that you have to deposit some amount. Something has to be deposited. If you are unable to deposit, if you are unable to get that particular amount, then you will be treated as untrustable person in that particular net in order to start any kind of transaction. Okay, so over here the principle is that a person may mine or validate the block of the transaction once he or she owns the particular transaction. So it means that more a miner holds Bitcoin or the altcoin, they more the power they have. The proof of stake was created as an alternative for proof of work to handle the disadvantages of proof of work. PP coin was the first cryptocurrency to apply the proof of stake to the blockchain. Okay. So over here, I can simply say that how to trust the validators in the network. Over here, we call the miners as the validators because they validate the their ethers. By using their ethers, they validate that particular transaction. Okay, they invest something in order to validate one particular transaction. So if the stake is high in the network, then we can say that that validator is the trustable validator. But the problem over here is they try to solve this 51% possible attack problem, but they have forgotten that over here the rich person will become more richer, and that person may be a attacker, may be a genuine person. Okay, but the poor in the network who has entered with less stake value will be poorer in the network. That is the major disadvantage which has been specified, which arises in the proof of stake. Okay, so proof of stake versus the proof of work. The three conditions which we need to consider is the accessibility, centralization, and scalability. Accessibility is running the validator node on the proof of stake chain is sustainable for the lower barrier for the entry of the user that running on a node on proof of work chain. Centralization, so the complete network is a centralized one. So only a non-zero quantity of the crypto or an internet connection or the computing device can be used in order to solve the proof of stake chain. Scalability is nothing but it will allow the implementation of the scalability solution with the help of sharding. Sharding is nothing but a scaling method for the database in which the blockchain is divided into several shards. Okay, several shards in the network. These shards have contain the process of each and every block in the network. So sharding will allow the scalability in proof of work network, but it would have a consequential effect on the network security. So once it starts providing the scalability, it will start losing the security. So over here, we have to say that proof of stake coin chains should know the network validators. If they know those network validators, then we can say that proof of stake is good enough to work together. So the advantages of proof of stake are higher speed as compared to proof of work. It consumes low energy as everybody is bothered about their own stake. So lesser hardware are requirements as users can participate even without setting up a supercomputer. So these are the disadvantages of the proof of stake. As I have already discussed, that wealthier people will get wealthier syndrome and the poorer will be poor. Okay, so it is still vulnerable to any person with ample money to invest or may buy an insane amount of coins, that reducing the system's decentralization. So this is how the proof of work versus the proof of stake. You can just see that over here we are investing at this particular point. So proof of work is a requirement to define the complete computer calculation called as mining, how you are performing the mining, the complete procedure. Whereas a creator of a new block is chosen to deterministic way depending on its wealth. So how much he is going to invest, based on that you are going to say that okay, he is a well worth person. But these two are wrong, right? This consumes the more computational power. This may lead to an attacker to enter into the network with high value, high rewards, or you can say high stake. So reward is given for the first miner who solves the blocks problem. So network miners compete to be the first to find the solution for the mathematical problems is defined in the proof of work. Whereas the proof of stake system, there is no block reward, but the miners take the transaction fees. Whereas proof of stake currencies can be several and more, it is more cost effective compared to proof of work. So this is one more example, like with the help of images. Don't go with the matter, whatever is specified. Same thing, but here it's clearly mentioned, like from where you have started and what you have achieved, everything need to be specified. Over here, it is like you have your own wallet and you are going to take the amount and you want to deposit. So this is what we are going to see. Okay. So 51% attack can be avoided in the proof of stake because it will only have the amount value over there, how many rewards each and every stake has. So yeah, stakeholder has the stake. in terms of stake. Okay. So next comes the delegated proof of stake. So delegated proof of stake was designed as a technology-based democracy implementation using the voting and election mechanism to protect the blockchain from the centralization and malicious usage of that particular transaction. Okay, so it was first introduced in the cryptocurrency named as BitShares. First time the DPoS, that is nothing but delegated proof of stake, was introduced, was the name which was given for that was BitShares. Okay, so this is how the property works. So active DPoS based, it is for the witnesses and delegates by putting their tokens on their candidate's name, who is going to represent. It is like the general election, whatever we are seeing in the reality. So MLAs, MPs, they impose from one different party, right? Whether they are good, they are not good, that they only know. But they will impose like, okay, this person has to be elected, and they will do all the hangama, right, on the roads, that you should vote for this person, that this same way it will go. But in the network, instead of all those advertisement kind of issues, they will send a request to all the nodes saying that this much stake will be given to them, and this much his or her property exists in this particular network. So you need to vote, or you should not vote, that we have to check it. Okay. So in the roles of the witness and delegates differ, and one role may observe and one demolish the functions for the another role. Delegates are chosen to oversee the process and produce the key changes. They are not in charge of the block creation and confirmation of the transaction, but they supervise the criteria such as the transaction fees, block sizes, witness the pay and network block intervals. So this is how it works. So they take the in charge and they will just inspect whether everything is going on smoothly or not. If something happens, they immediately call the in charge and they will ban them. So it is like general election. The BJP leaders who have got elected in Karnataka, if they are not working, there are some issues which have been raised. Immediately from Delhi, they get the calls, right? So similarly, over here, the whole in charge, they just see, they watch, and they will see whether everything is working fine or not. Okay. So what are the various advantages of DPoS and the disadvantages of DPoS then? So the scalability, it allows the scalability, it gives more speed, the work will be very quickly, energy requirements are less, so it has its own defensive mechanisms, that is DDoS attack and all those things it will avoid. Decentralization mechanism is existing, so even if one particular network breaks, it won't allow, it is easy to recover with the help of the other networks. The information can be gathered immediately. Egalitarian, already we have seen the objectives of the consensus. So next comes the disadvantages of DPoS. The efficient existence of the network involves the involvement and coordination of the truly concerned groups through voting and the efficient control of the complete witnesses in the network. So that will lead to even that witnesses who are going to have a complete watch out in the network, they may control the complete network, they will impose or they will force the nodes to do some kind of work. Okay, so DPoS is vulnerable to classical real-time voting flaws. So users with small stakes will may decide that they don't want to vote, so it will be of no use. Okay, they are susceptible to the centralization as there are a small number of witnesses. So in order to overcome those, we have come up with practical Byzantine tolerant problem. So practical Byzantine tolerant is nothing but if everybody in the network coordinate with each other, then definitely we will achieve one transaction and each and every person in the network will be able to get the victory. That is rewards, in terms of rewards. But whereas if traitors exist, if they misbehave in the network, so over here you can see the out of 3 and 6, 7 people, if I say 4 are the traitors, that is 51% in the network, then the proof of work will fail over here. And proof of stake, based on the stake, if I say that traitor has more stake, okay, then the proof of stake also will fail. Similarly, for this Byzantine fault tolerance also, practical Byzantine fault tolerance. If we have to estimate whether how many traitors are there, but even if traitors exist, if the agreement rules or ethical rules are correct enough in order to transfer a transaction in the network and everybody have signed according to their level, then no one will able to misbehave in the network. It is easy to achieve a proper coordination in the network in order to get the rewards. Okay, so the famous let's first see this. The nodes are sequentially ordered in the practical Byzantine, enabled the distributed system with one node being the main node, that is the leader node. So over here we are going to have one main leader node. If that leader node itself is a traitor node, then we cannot help for anything. The whole system will collapse. Okay, so the aim is that all the honest nodes using the majority rule will help to find a consensus state in the network. The functional will system will operate as long as the maximum number of malicious nodes in the system must not be greater than or equal to 1/3 of the nodes. That's what I have to, like 51% risk still exists in the PBFT. So this consists of the normal case operations. These are the things. First it will request, then it is pre-prepare, then prepare and commit reply. Okay. So request is, though that is the primary by the users. Pre-prepare is consisting of the transactions produced by the primary user and then forwarded to the as in the form of replicas for each and every node. Prepare is nothing but receiving the proposal, the backups has to verify, and if they succeed, then they have to broadcast the prepare message to all other replicas. Then the backups will help in verification process. But if verification fails, then there is no use of those backups. Commit is nothing but they will receive the prepare message from the two. If they receive the 2/3 of all the backups as in the form of a commit message, then they will now be broadcasted by the replicas. Okay, for the second round of voting. Reply is nothing but the result of the consensus. That is energy efficiency, transaction attacks which are possible on the Byzantine fault tolerance, practical Byzantine fault tolerance, that is symbol attacks and the scaling attack. The platforms which uses the Byzantine variants are the Zelica, Hyperledger Fabric and the Tendermint. So Zelica is nothing but it's a combination of PBFT along with proof of work. Hyperledger Fabric is a permissioned version of the PBFT, whereas Tendermint it's a combination of DBoS and PBFT. PBFT. Okay. So these are the various platforms which are available for the PBFT. So which is a combination of different other consensus algorithms in order to get the perfect output. So that there we are going to try to avoid the losses which are going to happen. Okay, so the scaling, the drawbacks of the PBFT already we know about the civil attacks, so I'm not going in detail. So whereas scaling, it will not allow the nodes to scale properly. Okay, so that the time taken in order to respond to a particular request will increase, and that will lead to the network performance to be low. Okay, that is about the scaling attack. By the, I mean, this attacks is possible when they are when their traitors are almost more than 2/3 or in the 1/3 in the network. Okay. Next comes the Ripple. Ripple is nothing but the Ripple protocol consensus on in order to perform one particular transaction. That is the server, which is a entity to run the Ripple server program, where the participants in the consensus process are opposed to the Ripple client. Ledger is nothing but a record of the total amount of the currency. Last closed ledger is nothing but the recent ledger that has been approved by the consensus process. Open ledger is the current operating state of the node in the ledger. Okay. Unique node list is nothing but the servers maintaining their own unique name in the network, so that there are a group of servers that will consult with a consensus algorithm. So a set of servers where they are saying, okay, we are going to perform this particular consensus. We are going to deal with some set of, we will act as a proposers. We will act as a only the databases. We will act as, we will involve, we will allow the as a communicators in between the nodes. Okay. So in that way, they have the unique node list. Next comes the proposals. Proposals are the broadcast transactions that are included in the process of consensus. Where it begins, every server attempts to include the valid transactions in the proposals. So this is how it will go around. So over here they have to validate. So it will broadcast the messages. First it will be verified. So this is how the work will done. So it will again send back the messages saying that, okay, this is validate. These are the validators who are going to validate in the network. So once they get the validation of that particular node, then it will be done. So next comes the Paxos algorithm. So Paxos is nothing but it's a it creates a replica which nominates itself as a leader, and the client executes the command on the given replica. Okay, the execution will be tagged with the highest number seen by that particular replica. There are two phases in the Paxos algorithm, that is the prepare phase and the commit phase. So before the prepare and commit phase, first there are some assumptions need to be considered for the Paxos algorithm. That is, the concurrent proposals need to be considered, validation of those validators as well as the proposer validations has to be considered, majority value need to be considered in order to accept the server's value over there. Asynchronous network need to be considered, that is how much the unreliable information can be flooded into the network. Okay, so that how much, that is the tolerance value, how much it is going to consider. Fail. So fail, stop, false, that is nothing but if there is a fault that has occurred, it should not stop at this particular level. It has to forward, or it has to notify the person so that it can be solved. But this is not yet solved in the Paxos. Okay. So unicast and announcements are allowed. It should allow the unicast and the announcements in the Paxos algorithm. So until unless we say that these are the assumptions which are being satisfied, then we cannot say that they can go for the prepare phase or the commit phase. So replica will send a message about the change of its related number to the most of the replicas present in the network in the prepare phase. Whereas in the commit phase, the accepted replicas will be sent to the proposer, saying that all the same thing like the previous algorithm which we have seen, that is PBFT. Okay, so in the PBFT, whatever the rules it will follow, almost it adopts the prepare, commit, and all the phases: request, prepare, pre-prepare phase, prepare, commit, and reply phase. Right. So same way it will also follow the in the Paxos. So these are the two major disadvantages of the Paxos, that is dwelling leader and the livestock. So dwelling leaders are nothing but the precedents which are present in the network. Instead of them, each one will try to pass the competing bills in the network. Okay, so in order to have the commit and accept phase to be performed, they will send the bills in the network. This is like the election process where it happens, and continuously I want my bill to be passed. So I'm trying from the Congress party. If it is not done, I'm trying from the BJP party. If it is not done from X party, I'm trying from Y party. I'm trying. So somehow the attackers will able to enter into the network, so they will dwell the leaders in the network. Okay, until unless they get the proper response, they will just continuously send. That's it. Next comes the live log. Live log is nothing but if the rate of replicas are greater than the rate of acceptance, then the newer request with the higher number would reject. So that is how it has to be taken care. So even the request is a genuine one, if it is greater than the replicas, then obviously it will be discarded in the Paxos. Okay. In order to overcome these two problems, they have come up with multi-Paxos algorithm. Okay. So multi-Paxos is nothing but it will find a sequence of numbers which will run the Paxos several times because one round of Paxos will result in one decision. That's it. Okay. So when you continuously try to send the information and run the Paxos continuously, then you will get a optimized solution. And we can assume that a single stable leader, and we can skip the prepare phase at that particular point. We can directly go to the accept phase. Okay. So once you go to that accept phase, there is no need to continue the sending out of the proposal numbers. Okay. Because it is believed that the leadership will stay sticky unless the complete transaction is done. The first proposal number sent out will never be overridden because there is only one leader. Only the others who are present in the network will send the accept messages in the subsequent rounds of the Paxos. Let us say with the N as the proposal number and use in the original prepare request and the additional parameters indicating the sequence number which has been described here. So you can see this is the multi-Paxos. Continuously it will send the information. So client will send the command to the server. Then server uses the Paxos to choose the command as a value of log entry. Then server waits for the previous log entries. Then the server returns the result from state machine to the particular client. So next comes the Raft algorithm. Raft is based on a model of consensus which is guided by a leader, where a distinguished leader is chosen and the entire responsibility will be given to that particular leader of the cluster. A replicated log is maintained by the leader throughout the transaction so that the nodes in the cluster cannot be compromised. It involves the leader election, commencing of an election. First, the leader has to be selected. Within that leader election, it should allow the commencement of the election. Then the election procedure has to be followed. Then the log replication has to be allowed in order to have a proper election in the network. Then the safety of the network has to be followed. So safety of the network is nothing but it should ensure that the leader election and the log replication operations are performed in all the various circumstances. Even if the traitors exist in the network, it should able to perform the safety operations. So this is how the Raft will work based on leader election process, commencing of the election, and log replication and the safety of the information. So it can in this way, if the procedure is followed in all these sets of rules, then we can guarantee against the consensus malfunction. That is, you are taking care of the election safety, you are taking of the matching safety, You're only selecting one leader and you are taking care of the state machine safety of the network and the follower node. If any crash is there, then it can eventually it can allow the other node to be there at that particular level of time, so that in order to finish one particular transaction. So this is how the client and server will work. Okay, so the client server can be election node at one particular time, and it can be a communication node at one particular time. It can be like these are the various servers which will act accordingly and it will fetch the reply. Okay. So the advantages of Raft is easy to understand, easy to implement. They are independently approachable to the sub problems. Over here, you can say that there are uh, set of nodes which are present in the network. Then they can divide themselves, the nodes, into a small subgroups in order to solve one particular problem. And once they solve the problem, then they will come up, they will discuss with the complete group leader, and then finally the solution which uses the less computational values and which will take less time to get the result, that will be elected, accepted by all of them. Okay. Safety from failures, it uses the remote procedural calls, and over here ease of implementation we say because it uses the C++ or Java in order to implement the program codes. So it is easily understandable for us to write the code in that language, right? So next comes the fairness, acceptance, availability of the completeness. So it employs the latest concepts. It allows the researchers to encourage. It encourages or allows the researchers and experts to test on it with the simple procedures. Okay. So that we can go ahead, and for this the availability of implementations are there with the help of GitHub. So if you go to GitHub, there are some different open source implementations which are available for various use cases. Already it's been implemented and done there in the GitHub. That we can see. What is the use of remote procedure calls over here? Remote procedure calls are used to request the votes and synchronize the clusters in the network. So what are the various disadvantages of Rafters? They are strictly a single leader protocol. There are theories about the assumption to be the actors, such as non-occurrence of Byzantine errors, and decreases the applicability in real life. It is more specialized approach to a subset of issues that occur when reaching to a consensus. Okay. Proof of elapsed time. So in order to overcome the Raft consensus, we have come up with the proof of elapsed time. So proof of elapsed time is nothing but over here, each node in the blockchain network has to wait for randomly chosen time, so that the whole process will come to one particular end up. Okay, so it will be designated as a waiting time to complete, and then they are allowed to win the new block. For a specific duration, each node in the blockchain network generates a random wait time and goes to the sleep mode. So once it wakes up, the shortest waiting time will commit to the blockchain with a new block, transmitting the appropriate information for the entire network. So discovery of the next block and the same cycle then repeats. So two significant factors which we need to consider in order to ensure that POET works properly is the system, in order to win the network, competing nodes actually choose a time that is genuinely random and not a shorter period. Okay. Second one is the process establishes that the waiting period has already been met by the winner. So this is how it will happen. Over here, the major advantage of POET is nothing but even if the database exploits or then the IDs will be exploited, but not the main information, because everything has been linked up with the IPFS. Okay. So a user wants to publish a document. If we go with that, using the Explorer, he is going to create a POET API. So which pushes the document to the node, POET node. Node saves the document to IPFS and Bitcoin. Okay. So whole information will be saved at the main server, and the information with that particular ID for that particular file will be taken, and then it has been given as an input to the other nodes. Okay. So even this server will get destroyed, or one node will get destroyed, then the main information still stored with the IPFS still remains safe. Okay. So this is how the other POET nodes pick up the hash function of the Bitcoin. Nodes use the hash to find and verify the doc file. Then we make the doc accessible to POET API and Explorer, which allows the everyone to use POET. So these are the advantages of POET, that is low power consumption, high resource efficiency, safety from the external attack, transparency, cost efficient. Okay. So next comes the proof of burn concept. So this has been used and verified. It is used, I'm sorry, proof of burn is nothing but it consists of the coins which has to be sent to the public addresses which are being verified and which are inaccessible and useless. These addresses are known as Ether addresses. So these will be only used in order to send into the network. That's it. Only for the verification process. That's it. Nothing else. So these are called as Ether addresses and generated randomly without being associated with any public key. So the coin burning method decreases the supply of the market and induces the economic scarcity, leading to the possible rise in its value. So this is what happens in the blockchain network. So first thing is they will send public addresses randomly and they'll spend some coins over there so that it will just validate in the network where they will verify which network is good, which network is free, and all this stuff according to the rules and terms and conditions which are good enough. Then that's it. They spend those coins. After once they get the information, then they will be entering into the supply of the market. That is nothing but the key, like out of 10 rupees, they are going to spend 1 or 2 rupees in order to find the genuine parties in the network. After that, they are going to spend their amount, 7 rupees or 8 rupees, whatever they want to spend, they will spend it. But the loss of 2 rupees or 3 rupees, whatever they spent before, that will not be of no use. Okay. So coin burning is another way to make the investments into the network security, but they will gain the security. So these are the various advantages of the proof of burn. Because of the coins they are burning and they are trying to verify the network whether it is proper or not. So they gain the sustainability and reduce the power consumption. They minimize the hardware which is not required in the network, and the coins are virtually mining free. So the circulating supply is reduced by the coin burns. The miners are encouraged for long-term commitment. Circulation and mining of the coins is less centralized. Okay. The disadvantages of this is it is less transparent, as everyone in the network will able to understand, okay, this person has spent some 2 to 3 rupees in the network, so that he can just advertise or he can just get the information. And it is of slow speed. First, it has to verify. The time taken for the information to check in the network will be counted. So that's why we are saying that it is lower speed. Less eco-friendly, because it is not really environment conscious, because you are burning the Bitcoins, which is created by proof of work mining, which uses the lots of resources in order to produce that percent of coins to be burned. Okay, it uses the proof of work concept over there in order to generate the coins, and those coins will be burned in the network for the proof of burn concept. In that way, it is not so eco-friendly because the resources will be used much. Next comes the scalability. Scalability, working on the larger scales, is not proved to be good. So it will confirm the it will raise the confirm the terms in terms of efficiency, security, and testing sometimes, which whenever it is required. So proof of sorry, yeah. Next comes the proof of capacity. So till now, like whether it is clear to all.
Participants, please respond.
Okay, let me finish then. I think there is no response. So let me finish, then we will have the discussion. Okay, next comes the proof of capacity. It is a two-step process where the hard drive is plotted for the usage of the space which has been not used from long time. So next, it uses the hash which contains the 8192 hashes numbered from 0 to 8191. So it uses this scooping concept where the hash function of 0 and hash 1 will be treated as a scoop 0. Hash 2 and hash 3 we will be using as hash 1. Hash 4 and hash 5 we will be using as hash 2. So on, so forth. In order to continue with that, you can just consider the example. If a miner starts the mining operation and produces a scoop number 38, then the miner will go to the scoop number 38 of nouns 1 and calculate the deadline value using the data of that particular scoop. If the method is repeated continuously for calculating the deadline on the hard drive, then each nouns will be responsible for the whole transaction. If nouns value has been changed and they are just reflected or attacked and done some changes, then whole system will collapse. Okay. So this is how the plotting and mining of the proof of work will work. First, it has to plot by checking where the space is available. So that is the reason it will decrease the usage of the other resources, hardwares. Okay, hard drive, wherever the space is there it will try to perform the hashing function. Okay, it will try to store the miner's account. It will list all the possible nouns values which have been generated in that particular network. Then it will start performing the hash function. Okay, the hashes, all these hashes will be paired as in the form of a scoops. That is, two hashes will be called as one scoop, and each scoop numbers will be assigned to the hash functions. Okay, so total hash values which are present is 8192. So these are the various advantages of the proof of capacity, that is lower energy consumption. It is more fairer than the proof of stake due to the availability of the cheaper disk which we are using, and low power as well, because of once we search, it is whatever the hard drive it is going to consume the power, that is more than enough in order to allocate the resources or perform the hash functions in the network. Okay, so it is more eco-friendly as we are not using the proof of work concept over here. It is more eco-friendly. It apparently up to 30 times more energy efficient than the Bitcoin cryptocurrencies ASIC based mining. Users do not need to have a specialized hardware or constant hard drive upgrades and can mine using their existing hardware. Any regular hard drive is enough in order to perform the transaction process using the proof of capacity consensus. Okay, so the best example you can use as Android based systems can be used as a part of POC. Okay, data from mining can be quickly wiped off and drive can be reused for some other purpose of storing data. The major disadvantages of proof of capacity is it is not adopted by many developers because they lack the experience how to use and how to maintain that particular proof of capacity consensus algorithm. That's the reason people are still stick on with the proof of stake, and at max they went till proof of stake. Still they are stick on with the proof of work. There's a possibility for the mining process to be affected by the malware. The competition to produce the higher capacity hard drives may arise with the widespread adoption of the proof of capacity algorithm. Why we are saying that malwares are possible with the use of this when we are performing the mining process? If the hard drive contains already some malware or virus which is existing, then obviously it will be spread to complete network. So even the concept which we are using, the proof of capacity for the consensus achievement, that will also be changed, modified. Okay. The applications of proof of capacity are Spacemint, Permacoin, Burstcoin. So Spacemint uses the consensus protocol based on the non-interactive proof of capacity variant called as proof of space, where we are going to use the unique hard to pebble graph which is generated and committed by all the participants in the network. In the Permacoin, it repurposes the proof of work of Bitcoin with a more generally function that is provided to be a stable distributed storage. Okay. So over here, the leadership election in the Permacoin requires the candidates to store the portions of the huge files. When we talk about the huge files, obviously, then again it raises like what kind of, where it has to be stored, what kind of storage we require. Okay. So next comes the burst coin, which has been used. It is a energy hungry CPU and GPUs, which can be used for the burst coin. So the burst mining relies on the existing free space on your hard drive. Or if the hard drive is available for low cost, then anybody can mine into it using the burst coin, and they can write their own application with the help of the proof of capacity algorithm. Okay. So this is the proof of burn and proof of importance which has been specified. So proof of burn, protocol users are required to burn their coins in order to mine the proof of burn blockchain. The users send their coins to the verifiably unspendable addresses or an ether addresses over here. Whereas in the proof of importance, the mechanism determines the nodes that are eligible to add a block to the blockchain through a process called harvesting. So harvest of a block collect the transaction fees associated with that particular block. So it will slowly, the proof of importance is raising the importance rather than the proof of burn concept. Okay, as it is only collecting the transaction fees and it is associated with whatever the block it is going to have, it is only going to consider that particular transaction. Whereas we are going to burn the coins in the proof of burn concept. So next comes the proof of retrievability. So proof of retrievability will offer a standard functions for issuing and verifying the proofs to or on a remote host. So it will allow the file owner to check the host for the integrity and availability of the data. It will initiate the store of a file within a network which is encoded and then propagated across the network. So it is like you are allowing it so that you can store a particular file, you can have your own name, you can propagate in the network. The file is stored with the several nodes which are present in the network, which arises the challenges for the file owner, saying that the integrity of the file will be lost as it will be stored by many people. So in order to validate the honesty, the client has to receive the answers for the challenges which have been raised by the other peers of the network which are in the whole transaction to be performed. So this is how the proof of retrievability. You are retrieving something from somewhere. So in order to gain the integrity of the people, client will receive the challenges from other owners, and then he will try to post those answers in terms of the values. Okay. So how to analyze the proof of retrievability then? It is a compact evidence of the ownership of a file by the client itself, but the random chunk of the file is checked instead of moving the entire file to a particular network for the proof verification. Okay, so as it uses the low communication, it will allow the low communication so that it can use only the small part of the file, and it will allow for the checking of the process. The protocol implements the encoding of the processing of the network files larger than the peer's memory. The protocol includes the several criteria for modifying the security and performance trade-offs. Okay. So next comes the proof of luck. So the assumptions which are to be considered for the proof of luck to perform are nothing but CPUs has to implement a suitable TEEs, that is trusted execution environments. It should able to provide the TTEs in order to implement the proof of luck. Okay, so the best example we can consider over here is Intel SGX, which is available for the participants in order to have the suitable TEE in order to perform the operations. So the TEE programs can create the unbiased or uniform random numbers that cannot be manipulated by the attackers. So over here, the assumption, these are the various assumptions which we have in order to perform the proof of luck. So the concurrent invocations can be observed in the TEE operations. Okay, so in order to perform this, these are the assumptions that we should have a suitable CPUs and the TEE environment so that it cannot undergo with any attack. Okay, and it should give a proper result to the users. So in order to after this assumptions, these are the ideal assumptions which are not possible, but we have to assume in order to develop a proof of luck consensus mechanism. For each round, the protocol need to send signals to all the participants in order to commit the uncommitted transactions into a new block. And a numeric value need to be given according to the version of that particular block. And election need to be carried out where all the participants vote for one randomly, and the one who gets the highest votes is the luckiest one. So the luckiest block is recognized as the next block in the chain of the ledger. As long as they obtain the luckiest block, they minimize the network congestion. Other participants will quit the network and they try to broadcast and create their own new block. Until unless, so in the voting system, if I am the luckiest, I will be the next block in the network. The block which did not get the voting from for the longer time, they will quit the network and they will try to broadcast their own new block in the network and they perform the transaction. It's just a trial and error method purely on luck basis. Okay, so over here it is a zero knowledge based algorithm. So Alice can't see the Bob, but does not even know the route he wants to choose. So she knows the Bob who knows the door's code. Then what she has to do? So she will tell the Bob to route back. If Bob returns to the Alice when he is trying to go back, then the Bob will know the code. Alice will say that, okay, Bob will understand the code. Bob will select the route randomly. So, or else if Bob doesn't know the door code, then he won't able to come to the Alice, right? So this is how, like, you can say it is like vaguely a luck algorithm, where just by randomly chosen numbers they have to go and they have to just spread in the network. So these are the advantages of the proof of luck. Definitely they will synchronize the clock, which is not required between the participants, without controlling the majority of the CPUs and without breaching the PEE platforms. An attacker cannot control the blockchain. Blockchain cannot be controlled by the attacker using the threshold of PES. It is resistant to the custom hardware, not commonly available. Confirmation of the transactions is very fast. Protocol is efficient in terms of energy and network communications. So these are the various advantages of proof of luck. Although it takes some disadvantages, these are the various advantages if we are adopting the proof of luck in the network. So this is how we have discussed all various algorithms, and it is better to choose which algorithm will choose to the which kind of blockchain application. There are plenty of blockchain. Anyways, we are still following the proof of work algorithm only, because whatever the applications we are developing, it is purely based on Bitcoin or it is purely based on the Ethereum concept, right? So once we say that if you are using the concept of Ethereum, then but you can use a combination of proof of work with POET or any other algorithm. Proof of stake like the Zikulla or any other Hyperledger Fabric and all those things we have seen, right? PBFT supports some combination of POW and this type. So those things you can have a combination and go for the application development. Okay, so this is how the process will takes place in the for the consensus agreement. So any doubts or any clarifications which you want, then we can have a 5 minutes discussion before we end up. Thank you so much.
I think they are asking in the chat questions.
Okay.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. So the question which have, 1 minute. The question which has been asked by Rohilya Nas.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, is it you?
Yeah, ma'am, it is me.
Okay. You can develop the POS with Ethereum, but there is some MetaMask or something you have to use. Okay.
Okay.
The concept, you cannot go directly with the Ethereum, but there are some other Matic network or MetaMask which you are going to combine with the help of POS. Then you can go with that, or you have to go with Ethereum smart contracts.
Okay. We can develop proof of stake with the help of MetaMask or some smart contract development.
Yes, yes, yes.
You want to say. Second thing is this, ma'am. Is it more convenient to use Hyperledger for proof of stake or not?
1 minute, 1 minute. Can you repeat because it was not audible properly? Can you
Ma'am,
repeat?
I'm asking that is it more convenient to use Hyperledger Fabric for implementing proof of stake?
Yes.
Okay.
But when you implement, it is like simply the when if you go with a combination, then it will give you more proper results. For from the user point of view, it is okay. Like you are flexibly, like you can use it, right? But when you go with the computational powers and when you go with the output what you are getting it, then it's better to have a hybrid model rather than going with only one. Okay.
Ma'am, can you explain more precisely, like in hybrid model, how I can use this hybrid model on the two different
Like in
platforms?
the PBFT, I have given some platforms, right? In PBFT, Zeliqua and one more I have discussed. I don't remember exactly.
Raft, I think you have said that.
Yeah, in Raft or in PBFT, somewhere I have mentioned that we can use those
Sir, ಅದೇ ಇದಿನ್ನೂ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ
combination
ಸೆಷನ್.
of those algorithms, right?
ಈಗ
Okay, ma'am.
11:40 11:30 ಅಲ್ವಾ 11:40 ಮುಗಿಯುತ್ತೆ. ಅರೌಂಡ್
Thank you so much,
12
ma'am.
o'clock meet. Any other questions?
For PBFT, I have defined as you can have a Zelica or a Tendermint. Hyperledger is the permission-based version of the PBFT. If you are using only the permission for the all the contracts which are existing in the blockchain, all the nodes which are used for the validation, then it is good enough. Else, you have to go with the combination process where you will have tight security which will be provided. Okay. I
Okay.
hope Rohila Nas, I have cleared your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Any other?
So if no questions, I think we will end the session now. We will be meeting at 2:30 again with Madam. Madam, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Again,
Yeah,
we will meet at 2:30.
Yes, we will meet at 2:30. The next session will start at 12 o'clock. The link is being shared. All of us will join at 12 o'clock. Thank you all.